endless grace you remain always the bright morning star.
Thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you, Father, for opening us up in that prayer. I remember there was a priest on our college campus. His name was Father Gus. Now, Father Gus was about 4.5 feet tall. He was about 85 years old. He was a living saint, but he was up to always a lot of mischief. And one day, I remember he was walking down the street on the college campus with a bunch of college guys, just having some fun. And walking towards them was a group of beautiful college women. And as they were passing each other, Father Gus had a little smile on his face. And the girl said, "Father Gus, how are you doing?" And he said, "Well, today's my birthday." And they said, "Oh, Father Gus." And they hugged him and they kissed him and they suffocated him with more human affection than anybody deserves. And they kissed him and they ran off and to go bake him a birthday cake. And then one of the college guys looked at Father Gus and said, "Father Gus, you're terrible. You know today is not your birthday." And he winked at him and said, "That's how it's done, boys." Now, this is now not how I'm going to recommend you guys find affection from college females, but the fact is that we're all created for love. And we don't often get to see the real thing. I got to see it with my grandparents. They were married for 67 years. They had 10 children, and their names were Joseph and Mary. I mean, you couldn't ask for more. And the best thing about them is they would flirt with each other constantly. I grew up kind of watching this. I remember one day I came in the kitchen, my grandma was mixing something up, and my grandpa walks in. He's feeling kind of frisky. And he walks up to her and he slaps her in the thigh. And he's like, "Hi." He says, "My name is Joe." And she looked at him and she's like, "I know." And I'm like, "Oh, they're 100 and they're flirting. I love it." And then, now, she passed away about, 2-3 years ago. I remember being at her funeral. I'm standing next to my grandpa, and he's real weak. He's had all these knee and hip replacements, and he's trying to lean over her coffin for the last time, just to be close to her. And he leans over, and he's kind of shaking, and he gave her a kiss on the nose, and he said, "Bye, babe." And I saw it, and I'm like, that's it. That's what I want. I want a love that's stronger than death. But how do you get there from here, where we live in a culture where more people hook up than even hold hands? A lot of people think, well, Jason, that's our grandparents' generation. That's a different kind of love. That kind of love doesn't exist today. It's just hooking up and friends with benefits. That love is gone, but it's not. A friend of mine just got engaged, and when her boyfriend proposed to her, he did so by giving her a book. It was the storybook of their love since the day that they had met. In the first page, it says Jessica. And she turned the page, and it says, "The day I met you, I wanted to die." And she's like, this is morbid. And then she turned the page and it says, "Die to myself. To love a woman more than I love me. To put somebody's needs before those of my own." This is the kind of love that we're created for. The problem is, where do you find it? I mean, what's the divorce rate? 50% or whatever? There are now jewelry stores in Los Angeles where you can rent wedding rings right now. This is how bad the culture's gotten. And some people think, well, is there any hope? Everything seems to be falling apart. I was speaking at a high school in Texas. They had 87 girls pregnant on campus. And one of the girls I met was 7 months pregnant. She just told her parents the news. They didn't know she was 7 months pregnant. She was just avoiding them and wearing baggy clothes. And now that they know she's pregnant, she didn't know how to tell them the full story. The full story is this. Her boyfriend lives in her closet. That's right. Her boyfriend's been living in her closet for more than a year. She brings him up leftovers after dinner. He hops out the window to hang out with friends. This has been going on for a year, and the parents have no idea. And so the moral of the story is when you get back to your dorm, check your roommate's closet. But now I'm sure things are going in better at your place, but this unbelievable breakdown. And amongst college students, the hookup culture, are we really happy with it? Well, in the United States, this sociological journal did a study analyzing college students and what they think about the hookup culture permeating the college campuses. Now, here's some interesting findings. One thing they found, across the board, college and university students overestimate how sexually active their peers actually are. When it comes to hooking up, what they found, though, is that college university students are twice as likely to hook up as they are to have a first date. They interviewed them and they found out that relationships that began with friends with benefits or a hookup, only 9% of them actually evolved into a romantic relationship. And now they asked the college students, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a short-lived hookup, or would you want a traditional romantic relationship? Get this, 63% of the guys and 83% of the girls would rather have a traditional romantic relationship. The majority of college students are not happy with this. And they asked the students, well, what's it feel like after a hookup? 5% of them said, I feel proud about myself. 95% said, I don't. They said, well, what do you feel after? And the guys said, well, I don't know, I kind of feel bad because I know I used a girl. And the girls say, I kind of feel bad because I feel like I got used. And this is happening all around the world. There was a big article in America on how the apps are now taking away the dating culture, because we've got these Tinder apps where you can just swipe your way into a relationship. And what's going on, they asked the girls, what do you think about this? And some of the women said this. They said, it's rare for a woman of our generation to meet a guy who treats her like a priority instead of just an option. One of the girls went on and she said, there's no dating. There's no relationships. They're rare. You could have a fling that could last 7 or 8 months and never actually call a guy your boyfriend. Hooking up is a lot easier. At least no one gets hurt. Well, not on the surface. And she said it's a contest to see who cares less. And guys win a lot at caring less. But if you say any of this out loud, it's like you're weak. You're not independent. You missed the whole memo about feminism. But what we're finding is people aren't happy. And my question is, has it always been this hard? Has it always been this complicated to find love? It has not. And I have the proof right here on the rainbow stationery of an 80-something-year-old woman who wrote me this letter. Listen to this. She shares what it's like to date in the 1940s, okay? Get this. In 1940s, she was a nursing student at the university. And what she said is that every Saturday night, she and all her girlfriends would go on dates with soldiers, military, Navy, and Marine soldiers, and they would go on for dances until 10:30 at night. That was their curfew. And it says, in those days, chastity was a given. Most of us got many marriage proposals. She said, going back to when I started dating in 1940, by 1945, my own count was a 10. Yes, she received 10 marriage proposals in a span of 5 years. This is someone asking you to marry them every 6 months. I mean, isn't that what it's like here? Aren't guys just like throwing engagement rings at you between classes? And she goes on. After graduation, we all got married. All of our marriages lasted throughout our lifetimes. My friend just had their 60th wedding anniversary. We just had our 50-something wedding anniversary. And she said, after my 50th, my husband Mike was stricken with Alzheimer's disease. And on February 13th, 2002, he passed away peacefully in my arms. Girls, do you get this? She's got a date every weekend with a man in uniform where chastity is taken for granted. She gets 10 marriage proposals in 5 years, has a 50-year marriage, and then her husband passes away peacefully in her arms on the eve of Valentine's Day. What planet is this woman from? This happens to be Earth, actually, less than 70 years ago. My question is not how did we get here from there, but how do we get back? How do we build a culture where love and things like chastity are taken for granted? And I think that's the key line in what she said. Chastity was a given. Now, what is chastity? People, that word has so much negative connotation attached to it. People don't understand what it means. When my wife and I were engaged, we got a phone call from the BBC. They wanted to do a documentary on our engagement because they heard that we were neither living together nor sleeping together. So apparently, news traveled to England that there's an American couple not cohabiting, so send out the camera crews. So they filmed us for 6 hours. Filming us going on dates together. They filmed me surfing with my groomsmen and my wife trying on her wedding dress the first time. And they asked us all these questions like, why are you not having sex? Why are you not living together? We don't understand. And after the interviews were done, they went back to England and then they mailed us the footage after the show had aired for all of the United Kingdom to watch. The show was called Anna in Wonderland, okay? And it's about the woman who interviewed us, Anna, who visits different bizarre cultures around the world. And then she reports on their strange behavior back to England. And the credits of the show are rolling, and it said, join us next week when Anna visits a colony of vampires. So this week is my wife and I. Next week it's like Edward Cullen and Bella from Twilight. And I did a little research on this gal, somewhat late, and found out she's on TV shows on female professional wrestlers, psychics, prostitutes, and people who believe they have animals living inside of them. And now, of course, my wife and I. But I think this is at least a fair representation of what the world thinks about chastity. And when I was in college, we'd spent a semester abroad in Austria, and every weekend we'd go to a different country. One weekend we went to the former Czech Republic and went to Prague, And there, they had a castle. And at the end of the castle was a gift shop where you could buy armor and swords and chainmail and stuff. And I wish I had bought it because they actually had a medieval chastity belt for sale. I mean, it had a padlock on it. It had like spikes to discourage visitors or whatever. And I wish I had bought it because what a perfect visual aid for what people think chastity is. This medieval, dull, neurotic, repressive attitude towards our sexuality. But that's not it at all. What the virtue of chastity is a virtue that frees us from what John Paul II called the utilitarian attitude, this selfish tendency to use. And so chastity frees us to love, and it frees us to know if we're being loved. And you could break it down. How does it free me to love? Well, look, if I'm a man who's addicted to porn, I'm addicted to masturbation, and I get married, will I really make love to my wife? Or will I use her body as an outlet for lust? And you tell me, in the heart of a woman, can she tell the difference? I think so. It frees us to love, because if I can't say no to sex, my yes really doesn't mean anything. And it also frees us to know if we're being loved. Perfect example. I'm speaking at a high school in the States, and after the talk, this girl comes up to me. She's dating this controlling, possessive, abusive older guy who treats her like garbage. And I said, sweetheart, you deserve a lot better than this guy. Break up with him. She said, I can't break up. I've given him everything. I've given my virginity, my reputation, my friends. I just can't let go of all that. And I said, look, I understand. I said, look, tell him no more sex. Watch what happens. She said, okay, I'll try that. She took her necklace off and gave it to me. She said, he makes me wear this. He's so possessive. I said, okay, I'll throw it away for you. And she left. And 5 minutes later, she comes back and she said, I dumped him. And I said, well, that was quick. She said, I told him no more sex. He slammed his locker shut. He threw a book at me. He said, where's your necklace? She said, I gave it to the chastity guy. But you see what happened is she tested his love. Do you love me? Do you want me? Or do you want the pleasure that you're getting at my expense? And all of a sudden, this virtue of chastity liberated her to know if she was being loved or just being used. At another university in the States, I knew a girl came home from a date crying. And her mom said to her, what happened? And she said, I went on a date with that guy, and as soon as we got in the car, he starts to make these little sexual jokes of what he wants to do with me. And I told him, no, I practice chastity. And he said, that's okay. There's lots of other stuff we can do, meaning everything but intercourse. And she said, look, I don't think you understand. I respect my body, my future husband, and God. And he looked at her, and he said, so you mean I'm not going to get anything tonight? And she said, no, you're not. He said, okay. He turned the car around, drove her home, dumped her off, and he left. And she's never seen him again. And you know what? Thank God. Because she could have given it to him for 5 years, wondering, does he love me? Is he in it for the right reasons? She didn't play that game, and the virtue of chastity brought his intentions right up to the surface. This is why C.S. Lewis said the following. He said, we use a most unfortunate idiom when we say of a lustful man prowling the streets that he wants a woman. Strictly speaking, a woman is just what he does not want. He wants a pleasure for which a woman happens to be the necessary piece of apparatus. How much he cares about the woman as such may be gauged by his attitude to her 5 minutes after fruition, for one does not keep the carton after one has smoked the cigarettes. Now, eros makes a man really want, not just a woman, but one particular woman. In some mysterious but quite indisputable fashion, the lover desires the beloved herself and not the pleasure that she can give. Now, this is the great value of chastity. One husband explained it this way. He said, authentic sexual attraction is always the attraction to the beauty of the other as a person, not merely an object of selfish consumption. This is the enormous value of the virtue of chastity. Because you see, what you win a person with in a relationship is what you keep him with. If you win a man with pleasure, here's the problem. Pleasure is repeatable. If you win him with your body parts are repeatable. Everyone I've met has parts. You can always get them somewhere else. But if you win him with who you are as a human being, you as a human person are unrepeatable. As a result, the relationships tend to be more stable. Now, this isn't just my idea. This was in the magazine, The Economist. This is an international bi-weekly business journal, and it had a headline, The Science of Sexual Abstinence. And I said, I'll pick up a copy, see what they have to say. Headlines, chastity before marriage may have its uses after all. Who knew? And it says right here, they studied 2,000 married couples, and they asked them, now, when did you start having sex in your relationship, and how are things going? And what they found is that the longer couples waited to begin having sex, particularly those who waited until they were married, had better sex, a better relationship, and had better communication and a more stable marriage. And so this is not the Catechism of the Catholic Church. This is an international bi-weekly journal saying it simply works. Now, how do we integrate this into our daily lives? I'm fearful because I think we have a generation of Christians right now, especially young ones, who know everything they're not supposed to do. So they went to Catholic grade school, they went to Catholic high school, maybe they went to youth group, and they learned all the thou shalt nots. And then they get to college, and you've got this college guy, okay, I got this down, I figured this out, okay, I can't have sex with my girlfriend, I can't look at porn, I can't live with my girlfriend, I can't contracept with my girlfriend, I can't clone my girlfriend, I remember that from bioethics. So no double date. Okay, wait a minute, okay, so I know everything I'm not supposed to do with a woman. Well, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do with her? Oh, sorry, we didn't cover that. Good luck in university. And so we're left to figure out, like, what am I supposed to do? And so tonight, instead of harping on all the thou shalt nots, how about we just dive into the thou shalts? How do we save our marriage before we even meet our spouses? And the first and foremost thing I would propose in the first step is to enjoy the season of singleness. Now, some of you, particularly women, might be thinking, well, look, I've enjoyed that season long enough, okay? That's like telling someone in Antarctica, enjoy this season of winter, okay? It's had enough, okay? You know, I hear you. But now, why am I proposing you enjoy the thing that you detest? Well, there's some benefits to this. If you look in the Old Testament, right in the middle is the Song of Songs, which is erotic love poetry in the middle of the Bible. Now, some of it's just beautiful literature. I mean, your eyes are like doves. You know, you've ravished my heart, my sister, my bride. Now, some of it you couldn't say to a girlfriend. Your hair is like a flock of goats tonight. Your teeth are like sheep. It's not going to fly. But some of the stuff in here is gold. And one of those passages is where the lover says to the beloved, you have ravished my heart, my sister, my bride. Look at the order of the words. Ravished my heart, my sister, my bride. Now, some people are like, oh, that's creepy. Why would you want to lust after your sister? Well, exactly. And if you knew what lust was, you wouldn't want to lust after your bride either. It's not the same thing as sexual desire, which we're going to get into, but look at the order of the words. Sister first. Well, I think what's so unfortunate is we live in a culture where it's like, oh, is he cute? Are you cute? Do you like each other? Date. And there's no foundation of a friendship. In fact, I was speaking at a university in Washington, D.C. I asked the crowd about the size. Now, when was the last movie you saw that portrayed masculine friendship? A man can enjoy the company of a woman without implying it's going to get sexual. When was the last movie you saw that portrayed masculine friendship? All of the university students could not think of a single movie. One of them finally raised his hand. He goes, oh, I know. I said, what's that? He said, Finding Nemo. And I said, okay, well, being in Sydney, that's relevant now. But I said, look, it's a cartoon. They're fish. It doesn't count. But what a testament to the culture that we have no examples of how to begin a relationship. Because what's happening is especially girls are jumping in so quickly into these relationships. They meet a cute guy, they start flirting, they start texting, they start hanging out and hooking up, making out. 3 weeks of making out with a guy. She's like emotionally married to him. She's like stalking him on social media. She's like picking out her wedding outfit on Pinterest. And she's only known the guy for 3 weeks. And then 4 weeks into it, it hits her. Boom. And she's like, oh, I didn't know he flirts with other girls. I didn't know he looks at porn. I didn't know he drinks. I didn't know he builds a methamphetamine lab in his closet with his friend. I didn't know that. It's like, and the problem here is that these relationships are taking off like a rocket and then they're coming down like a rocket. There's no foundation and they're getting too intense too fast. I've had girls tell me, I can't break up with my boyfriend. My boyfriend told me if I broke up with him, he would die without me. And I said, sweetheart, look, if he can't live without you, he doesn't need a girlfriend, he needs a therapist, okay? Like this is not a healthy relationship. This is a hostage situation, this is not what it's supposed to be. But the thing is, if you can, when you start to fall in love, instead of jumping in, what about maybe taking a little step back? Because if you want a kite to go up, you don't run with the kite, you pull back, and the tension lets it rise. It's the same principle in human relationships. Step back a little bit. Girls, ask yourself, who is this guy? No. Really, who is this guy? How does he treat his mother? How does he treat his sisters? How does he treat women he's not attracted to? What do his ex-girlfriends think about him? What kind of men does he hang out with? That will tell you virtually everything you need to know about a man, the men he chooses as his male companions. And ask yourself, does this guy share your morality, or does he just kind of tolerate your morality, kind of put it up to humor you? Are you on the same page? Amen. And so you gotta ask yourself these questions. And so, but also the guys can step back and ask yourself some serious questions. Who's this girl? Like, really, who's this girl? Look, I know she's pretty. I'm super attracted to her, but like, why? What am I attracted to beyond her physical beauty? What if every woman on earth looked just like she does? What is it about this one that would have drawn me to her? Is it deeper than the physical? Would I want my children to grow up to be like her? Could I see myself marrying her one day? You step back and you get answers to these serious questions, because the purpose of dating is to find a spouse, not because you're bored or because you're lonely. And what this means is when you date someone, it's like you're getting on a freeway and the road only has two exits: breakup and marriage. If that's reality, there's no point of committing unless you can see yourself with this person forever. And so you girls especially need to be careful that you're not missionary dating. You know, dating hoping you can fix the guy and change him and redeem him and all these other things. And you girls, your strengths are also your greatest weaknesses. That's how we are as humans. So one of your strengths as a woman is being able to see the potential in others that they might not even see in themselves. And so if you meet a guy and you're like, yeah, you know, I know he's got some issues, but I could fix that up, you know. It's like those, I don't know if they have these TV shows in Australia, like a home makeover TV shows where like someone falls in love with this property and it's like this dilapidated, you know, house, but they're like, oh, but we can fix it. Girls are dating like that, where the guy is the equivalent of a property that's like some dilapidated haunted crack house, you know, and she's like, oh, but we could put a swimming pool in there. Oh, I could put curtains up. We could dress this whole place up real nice. And girls are not dating a person, you're dating your own imagination. Because what you want to do is you want to commit to someone hoping they're going to stay the way they are for the rest of their life. Otherwise, you're dating a project and not a person. And if you can step back and just focus on the friendship, I think the relationship's got this better foundation. John Paul II said, when a man and a woman are united in true love, each one takes on the destiny, the future of the other as his or her own. And in that love, he said, the greater the feeling of responsibility you have for this person, the more real love there is. The less responsible you feel, it's not authentic love, it's egoism. And so if you want love, the first thing I would say is start enjoying that season of singleness and really living in it. Second thing I would say is if you really want love, don't look out there. The first place you got to look is here. There's the tendency to like, okay, where is she? Is that the one? Is she the one? Maybe that's the one. Oh, hey, she's the one. Oh, yeah. Oh, she's sitting next to me in mass. I like her. Yeah. And you start getting all excited here. But if we want to find love, the first place we got to look is in here. It's not about finding a perfect person. It's about becoming the person that the other one deserves for you to become, which means we need to take a very sober assessment of our own interior lives. Is there stuff in my life that needs to get rooted out before I'm ready for a marriage, before I'm even ready for a dating relationship? Is there junk in my own life that needs to get healed, that needs to get weeded out? And for many people, for guys as well as girls, one thing that needs to get weeded out is the vice of pornography. Now, there's this myth that porn is a guy problem. Oh, girls would never struggle with porn. No, girls struggle with modesty and emotional issues, but never pornography. No, this isn't fair. This is not true. In fact, I know a girl who struggled with porn for years. And she said, you know what it's like to be a woman who struggles with porn? She said, when guys struggle with porn, they all know they're in it. It's like they're in this big prison together. Oh, we're all stuck in porn. One day we'll break out of here. But there's like this fellowship in the sin. But she said, when you're a woman who struggles with porn, she said, it feels like you're in prison, but you feel like you're each in your own cell, and you think you're the only person in that entire quiet building. The fact is, lust is not a guy problem, it's a human problem. But we gotta break free from this junk. And I was raised with porn. Your buddies had it, your friends had it. First pornography I ever saw, I was like 7 or 8 years old, riding a bike around the neighborhood, and we found a dirty magazine in the street. I'm like, oh, what's that? I'm like, nice to meet you. I'm like, what do we do with it? My friend said, let's keep it. I'm like, well, yeah, where do we put it? He said, let's put it at your house. I'm like, oh, good idea. And so I'm back at the house, and I'm like, well, I'm not putting it inside. I don't want to get busted. Like, I had never seen porn, but I knew something was off. I said, I know what to do. So we ripped out all our favorite pictures, crumpled them up with little balls, and then we shoved them into bushes in front of the house. So we'd come outside, look at them when we wanted. Now, the problem is, my dad trimmed the hedges Saturday afternoon. Yeah, found porn growing on the plants out front, so I got busted by the porn plant, but we got we got back into it. I mean, in my high school, it was all over. One guy in my high school is actually passing out porn from his locker to anyone who would vote for him as senior class vice president. I mean, he's in the hallway, vote for Travis, vote for Travis. Like, I don't know where he is today. He's probably in United States Congress by now. But, you know, we would just laugh it off. Oh, not a big deal. And we would just blow it off. But the fact is, we had no idea what we were looking at. We didn't know what we were looking at was not some body. We're looking at a woman who's probably been sexually abused as a little girl. But we would just laugh it all off. We weren't aware that some of the girls in porn aren't even alive. Porn stars have a huge mortality rate. Death by drug overdose, murder, suicide, AIDS. I mean, I got an email from a grandpa. His friend's granddaughter was in the porn industry, and she died of a cocaine overdose. After the funeral, grandpa emails me. And he said, do you ever think how sad it is? Like, how many guys out there still lusting after pictures of these girls on the internet without even knowing or caring if they're dead or alive? I mean, this sickness of lusting after a woman could be in her grave right now should make any man look back and think, man, who have women become to me? Who have I become to women? Some of the girls in porn aren't even human beings. Computer companies are creating fake cover models. Every part of the woman is created with a computer. She doesn't exist. And neurologists have discovered that when a guy gets hooked on all this porn, it will actually train your brain. You will sculpt the structure of your own brain to expect every woman to live up to the fantasy of a disposable supermodel. Then how does this play out when you get married? When you were bored with supermodels after 90 seconds, and now you have one human being for the rest of your life? My buddy at the university had all the porn, and he figured I'll throw it away when I get married. And I went to his wedding, and he was divorced in 3 months. All he did was take all that lust he had piled up in the porn and looked at his bride that way, and the marriage is over as soon as it started. I'll never forget one high school girl said to me, she said, Jason, she said, I found out my dad looks at porn. She's like, I used to look up to him. Now I can't even look at him. I thought he was a better man than that. She's like, Jason, my dad is lusting after girls who are 2 years older than I am, while my mom's sleeping in the next room. And then he erases his internet history files he thinks we don't know. And then he goes to bed, leaves off to work in the morning after giving my mom a kiss. She said, it makes me sick how much I resent that guy. She said, you know what? She said, I just want to have sex with a boy to spite my father because he obsesses so much about my innocence, but he cares nothing about his own. And so every guy in this room right now knows this is not the father I'm going to be. I'm not going to be that dad who goes hiding in my office at 11 o'clock at night to go look at internet porn sites and then wake up like I'm a different man in this house. No, that's not the father I want to be. That's why if we can trash the porn, we can be faithful to our brides before we even meet them. Because what are we training ourselves for? It's like when I was at the university, I played 3 years of college baseball. And I remember one day I'm in the outfield and the coach yells at me, Evert, come in. And I ran to the dugout, and I'm like, what's going on? He said, I want you to pitch. I'm like, I don't pitch. He said, no, I saw you at batting practice. You got an arm, I want you to pitch. I said, look, coach, I didn't pitch high school ball. I don't know how to pitch. He's like, oh, you're going to do good. I'm like, I'm going to look like an idiot. He said, just get out there. And I get out there, and I'm nervous. I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm going to look stupid. And everybody's ready. You know, the batter digs in, the catcher squats down, and he starts giving us signs. Now, in American baseball, you know, the wicket keeper's like the catcher, only the catcher gives you signs. You know, hey, 1, throw a fastball. If you agree that's the right pitch to throw, you know, as the bowler, the pitcher, you kind of nod and you throw that pitch. If you want to throw a different kind of pitch, like a curveball, knuckleball, fastball, he gives you different numbers. Throw a 2, throw a 3. Now here's my problem. I don't really have a fastball. I don't have a knuckleball. I don't have a curveball. I don't have a forkball. Like, I have a baseball, okay? That's what I have. And so I'm like, what are we going to do? I said, you know what? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to play mental games with the batter. And so the batter digs in, our catcher squats down. He's like, 1. I'm like, no. He's like, 2. I'm like, not number 2. 3, no. 4, no. 5, no. Then he starts laughing because he's running out of fingers at this point. He gets to 7. I'm like, oh yeah, number 7, whatever that is. You know, and the batter's like, how many pitches does this guy have? I threw the first pitch. I hit the guy on the first pitch. I hit the batter with the ball. Hey, that's how it goes. But the moral of the story being is that if I train myself for years, lust, and the day comes to love a woman, you can't fake it. All you know how to do is take your own pleasure. And it's one thing to take the porn out of your life, but you're still left with that wound. It takes time to heal that thing. It's not a matter, oh, I stopped looking at porn yesterday, I'm good. It's like, no, some time needs to heal. In fact, I was speaking at a Catholic high school in the States. It was an all-girls high school. And the teacher wanted some university boys to come into her classroom to share how they stayed strong in their Catholic faith at their university. So these guys showed up, and they had this big discussion. During the discussion, one of the guys mentioned that he does look at pornography. The teacher asked him, don't you think that that could present a problem within your marriage one day? And he was perplexed. He said, why? That I look at pornography? And she said, well, yeah. And he said to her, why would that be a problem in marriage? He said, isn't that what your wife is for? Party foul. No, that's not what a wife is for. Marriage is not the fulfillment of porn. Porn is the distortion of human love. But this is what he was bringing into his marriage. But please understand, the solution to all of this is not just to white knuckle it through the rest of my life. Oh, I didn't look at porn this week. I did it. The solution is not simply the absence of porn, but for God to so transform our desires that we don't want to look at our sister in humanity in a way that would ever degrade her. Redemption is not just about forgiveness of our sins, but about giving us the desire to not want that sin again. And that's the depth of conversion that Christ is calling us to. And it's possible. But we got to retrain the way we look at women. And so when we look at a woman, the traditional teaching has been like, if she's an occasion of sin, then look in the other direction. Oh, if she's going to cause you to sin, look this way. Oh, wait, there's another one. Oh, that way. You're going to get whiplash. Okay, and there's wisdom in having custody over your eyes and avoiding the occasion of sin. But the ultimate goal of purity is not to spend the rest of your life avoiding the sight of the human body, but learning to see the glory of God in and through the human body. So here's an idea. When you see a beautiful woman on campus, instead of being tempted to think, oh, sex is bad, I can't look. No, how about this? How about gratitude? How about being able to see her beauty and thank God for that beauty? You could pray. You could see her and you could pray Psalm 84. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord mighty God. Just to say that in your heart. Don't recite the entire Psalm 84 while looking at her. That could get kind of awkward. But just thank you, Jesus. One way to think about it is if I had like some fancy diamond ring and you hold that in the sunlight, you see on the ceiling like all the glitter of that light being reflected. All those little lights being reflected from the diamond is like the beauty that women possess coming from the ultimate beauty, which is God himself. And so when we see these women on campus, is it 1,000 temptations to hell, or is that 1,000 reminders of the beauty of heaven? We have to transform the way we look. And a priest told me once, he said, look, there's a difference between having a bird fly over your head and letting it make a nest in your hair. Temptations are going to come, but it doesn't mean you make a home out of those things. When you're tempted, realize sexual desire in its core is a gift from God. All the devil can do is twist everything good that God has created. And our job is to come to Christ in our brokenness and say, God, teach me how to look at the human body. Because the woman's body, from the very beginning at the Garden of Eden, was an invitation of love. When Adam saw Eve's naked body, he was in awe of it. I mean, alas, this one is flesh of my flesh and bone of my bones. I mean, I think it's kind of funny that when Eve first sees Adam, she doesn't say anything. She's like, that's nice. I'm like, come on, man, that's it. But there's something here. There's something here because the woman is the most beautiful thing God put on earth. Nothing on earth is more beautiful than a woman. I mean, what do guys get addicted to looking on the internet? Like flamingos or something? Water. Oh, my roommate caught me looking at rainbows on the internet again. I was like, no. The woman's the most beautiful thing on earth. And what this means is you have a great responsibility in the way in which you present your beauty to the world. And this is why the church invites you to practice the virtue of modesty. Now, John Paul II said modesty can only be understood by a woman if she first understands the male psychology, that our brains are simply wired different than a woman's body is. So when a man's, like you women, when you're in class, when was the last time you were tempted by looking at a guy's legs in class? Okay, is that really a struggling point for you? You're like, oh, his hairy kneecaps, those are so nice over there. I mean, I don't want to gender stereotype, but I'm guessing that's not an issue for most of you. And so the fact is we're wired a little bit differently. Now, some girls may react to this and say, look, if a guy has a bad imagination, that's his own problem. Let's explore this for a little bit. In fact, a friend of mine, Sarah Swafford, who came to speak here, I believe, last year, Sarah's awesome. She said she was on her university campus, and a guy came to her. And he said, Sarah, here's the deal. There's a girl on this campus I'm totally in love with. I love being around her. She's super fun personality, and she's beautiful. But he said, here's the deal. She dresses in a way that's really immodest. I mean, the short skirts and the tight this and the revealing that. And he said, you know what, I respect her, but he said, the problem is nobody else does. He says, you should hear the way guys talk about her because of the way she dresses. And it really bugs me because I just wish guys would respect her more. And Sarah said, well, you should stick up for her around the guys. He's like, well, I do. But he said, Sarah said, okay, well, I think you should talk to her about it then too. And he's like, no. I don't want to talk to her about modesty. And Sarah's like, you should. He said, no, I would rather eat my arm off than talk to her about modesty, which is a lovely analogy. But he said, no, I don't want to do it. And Sarah said, I really think you should. She challenged him. So he said, okay, I'll give it a try. And he talked to her about modesty, and it was a disaster. And he came back to Sarah, and Sarah's like, oh, how did the conversation go? He said, terrible. And she said, well, why? What happened? And he said, well, I told her what you told me to say, and all she said to me was, if you guys can't control your imagination, then that's your own problem. And he was kind of just heartbroken. But literally, less than a week later, some girl came up to Sarah, totally different girl, and she said, Sarah, here's the situation. There's a guy I like on campus, and whenever we're together, he's always flirting with me. And he texts me late at night, and we've been working together for 6 months. He's always like playing with me, all these signals. But she said, you know what? When we go out with his guy friends, he acts like I'm invisible. Like he doesn't even know who I am. If I text him around them, it's like his phone is suddenly not on him. But she said, I'm so confused because then we get back in the dorm, and he's texting me and flirting. I'm just so confused. I don't know where this relationship is going. It's like this big gray zone. He just won't define the relationship. So Sarah said to her, how long has this been going on? And she said, about 6 months. Sarah said, you should talk to him. And she's like, I don't want to be the girl that has to beg him to commit. And Sarah said, look, 6 months is a long time to waste your life with a guy who can't make up his mind. Talk to him about what you're thinking and where the relationship is going. So she said, okay, I'll talk to him. And she did, and it was a disaster. And she came back to Sarah. And Sarah said, oh, how'd the conversation go? She said, it was terrible. Why? And she said, well, I told him, what my feelings were, and I was wondering if we're ever going to date. And all he said to her was, look, if you girls can't control your emotions, then that's your own problem. We're just friends. And you see what's going on here? Do we really care about the other sex? Or is it all about what gratification we can receive at their expense? It's not about controlling your women as if your bodies were the problem. It's about, in modesty, you're expressing love for a man who might stumble in that area, to be able to realize there's so much more about you than just our bodies. And so these virtues, we're breaking free from the pornography, growing in modesty. This is stuff we might need to heal, to root out within our own lives so we can be free to love. The third point I would throw out there is that if you want to find love, the next step you got to take is you got to face your fears. And for men and women, I think they're quite different. What are the fears for a man? Ask him. He'll be like, I don't fear nothing, man. I don't fear nothing. I'll beat up a great white shark. I'm afraid of nothing. No, men got fears. Oh, men got fears. What's a man's fear? A man's fear is initiating love, giving of himself, and committing. Because what if someone better comes along? Or if I commit, I'm going to be tied down. And this is because our culture has taught us as men a false notion of freedom. Oh, you don't want to get married? That's a ball and chain. Game over. Oh, you don't want to have too many kids? If you have too many kids, man, you're gonna lose your freedom. Oh, this is so messed up. In America, they even had an article about this. This was on the internet, MSNBC, 10 reasons you should never have children. Okay. Now first, you've written a stupid article when if humanity agreed with you, humanity would completely cease to exist, okay? That's when you know you're a bad article. And you wouldn't exist either for writing it. But let's look at this. Listen to this. These are 10 reasons you should never, ever, ever procreate, okay? It says, if you have kids, the fact is, a large part of your life will be focused on your relationship with your child rather than yourself. Ugh, heaven forbid. And it goes on, this one's great. If you don't have kids, you will not be exposed to germs that your children bring home from daycare, okay? This gets better. Microbes are easily transmitted, and they can be brought home in toys, blankets, cubby holes, and lockers from daycare. And it says, if you're exposed to these, you can get diarrhea, okay? It's true. My kids bring home like Ebola in their lunchbox. But it builds your immune system, man. It's good. And it gets better here. It says, if you don't have kids, you'll spare yourself from back pain from lifting and carrying babies, okay? Now, it says lifting a baby out of a car seat and into a supermarket cart can tax your core muscles and can lead to back pain and other injuries over time. As if you never have kids, you'll never lift anything more than 12 pounds. It says if you don't have kids, you won't be tempted to keep junk food around the house. It's like, what? Well, that's a reason to have kids. I have huge boxes of Lucky Charms in the closet. It's a reason to have kids. Then it goes on, you can be alone anytime you want. It says if you don't have kids, if you don't have time to yourself, you'll end up losing yourself. Not having kids mean you won't lose yourself. You can play tennis, do yoga, or whatever you want all the time. Now, if this wasn't so depressing, it would actually be funny. Or it wasn't so funny, it'd actually be depressing. But this modern notion that if I give myself away, I will lose myself. When in fact, the only way to find yourself is by making a gift of yourself. And so when it comes to the relationships, God has called men to initiate love. It is stamped into the man's anatomy that he is the initiator of life-giving love. Now, but because of original sin, we fall in this regard. Instead of initiating love, we initiate lust. Instead of initiating love, we initiate nothing. We just stay home and look at pornography and we don't ask anybody out. Or we hide behind some app when we ask somebody out. We're afraid to initiate love. John Paul II said this so. He said, God, who is Father, who is Creator, has planted a reflection of His creative strength and power within man. And we men should sing hymns of praise to God the Father for this reflection of Himself, not only in our souls, but also in our bodies. God the Father has left an imprint of Himself in our body. We're the initiator of love. And that's why the best homily I ever heard when I was a university student was a priest on our campus, got all the college students together, thousands of them. And he said, okay, young women, please raise your hand if a man on this campus asked you out on a date this week. Very few girls put their hands up. And that priest spent the rest of the homily drilling into the guys for failing to initiate relationships. And you should have seen the girls. They were like, hallelujah, Father. Preach on. Can I have a witness? And those girls fell in love with Father Ron from that day forward. But I'll tell you, we loved him more because he called a spade a spade. He smoked us out of our little holes, and he gave us that nudge we needed. I remember reading one priest. He said, don't be an indecisive wimp hoping for an apparition. Trust in God and pop the question. Now, here's the problem, though. Guys are not given specifics on how to initiate love. All we're given, and women understand, we're just given generalities. Be a gentleman. Okay, that means nothing to a man, okay? Just so you women know, when you get married, husbands, men, we're terrible unless you're specific. If you say something general, we don't get it. Like my wife will say, honey, I could really use more help around the house. I'm like, house big, and then she says, take out the trash. I'm like, oh, take out trash, I can do that, okay? We need specifics. It's the same thing with human relationships. With poor guys going into college, go ask some high school guy getting ready to go to college. Go ask him, hey, what's it mean to be a gentleman? He'll be like, gentleman, like, oh, you open the door for the girl. Like, so if there's a door and a girl, you open the door. Okay, good. What else? They'll be like, well, if there's another door, you also open that door for the door. Let's stretch it a little bit here. And no. Okay, let's get a little more specific here. Okay, you ask her out, and when you ask her out, you plan the date. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Let's play video games. It's like, no, plan the date. And when you get on the date, let's say you go to a restaurant, you pick her seat for her. Not because I'm going to tell you where to sit, but if it's a beautiful view, come on, just give her the beautiful view. If there's no beautiful view, the man should take the seat facing the wall. So she knows during dinner, your attention is on her, not on the rugby game or the cute little hostess walking by, and it makes her feel honored. You tell this to young guys, and they're like, oh, that's good. Because we just need these specifics, and I also tell the guys, when it comes to relationship, don't flirt with girls. Oh no, do not be a flirty boy. Because what's a flirt? In the dictionary, a flirt is someone who pays romantic attention to another without serious intentions. Instead of being flirty, discern if you're supposed to be in a relationship. Not only is it the right girl, but is it the right time? You discern the relationship, then you pursue her with sincerity, and then you commit to her with clarity. Now, this is not a robotic formula. You don't go up to the girl, I've discerned I should pursue you. That's a stalker from the Catholic Society. Okay, no. It's not a formula, but just some principles. And then when you ask out, you got to ask out face to face. And when it's time to break up, you got to break up face to face. These principles, I think, we want this stuff. In fact, I gave this talk at a university in America. I think it was Michigan State University. And after the talk, this guy came up to me, and he's all like excited. He's like, and I'm like, what's going on? And he said, do you have gum? And I said, yes, I have gum. And I went in my backpack, I gave him a piece of gum, and I gave it to him. He snatched it out of my hand. He's like, I'm going to ask a girl out right now. And he just took off. I'm like, go get him. I'm like, don't forget to discern. Forget it. Just ask her out. But it was just like he was waiting just to be let loose. Just to be able to say, hey, it's okay to initiate. It's okay to initiate manners. It's okay to be chivalrous again. I mean, the culture is ripe for this. Now, please understand, ladies, and what I'm saying to the men, that I'm not saying that your job is now therefore to be passive. Some girls fall into that. Oh, he'll come to me. He'll come to me one day. Oh, he'll come to me one day. It's like Ingrid, you're 97 years old. Oh, he'll come to me one day. It's like, yeah. If he's a post office worker, maybe he's going to show up at your door. But no, you got to get out there. Go where the good guys are. Get involved in campus ministry. Get involved in the Catholic Society. Get involved in service. Get involved in the diocese, in pro-life. Get involved where the good people are. Put yourself out there. It's not about being passive and it's not about being aggressive, but about being actively receptive. Now, I think we want this stuff, but if the guy is afraid of giving, initiating, and committing, what's the girl typically afraid of? The girl's kind of typically afraid of the opposite, that she's not worth committing to. She's not worth someone initiating love. Why? Because she's just not enough. And as a result of not being enough, some girls will think, well, I'm just going to end up alone. And so what ends up happening is you have these dreams of love that typically start to get rained on after a while. And because she doesn't find love, and so she thinks, well, maybe I'm being naive. And maybe her friends tell her, dude, you got to loosen up a little bit. Have a couple more drinks, go clubbing with us. Just loosen up a little bit. If you really want to find love, you can't be Mrs. Church Girl all the time. I mean, you got to loosen up. And so she starts to doubt herself, these seeds of doubt. And then what happens is she starts to lower the morals a little bit, and then she ends up disappointed, because that's not going to bring about more love. After the disappointment comes justification. Well, yeah, I know I did that with him last night, but it's not like I'm doing it every weekend. And at least we love each other. All these excuses. But the fact is, when you're doing something good and virtuous, you never make excuses for your behavior. If you're doing something good, like you're feeding the homeless, you don't make excuses. You're not like feeding the homeless and you're like, well, at least I'm not robbing a bank up here. Your conscience is at peace. But when we're doing something wrong, then it's when we're making these excuses. Now, I remember meeting one girl, a teenage girl, and she said, look, yeah, I know I've slept with more than 20 guys, but I'm not as bad as my friend. She's been with 67 different guys. So no matter how far we fall, we can always find someone worse off than we are. But these are just excuses. And what ends up happening is after a while of justifying lust, typically what happens is just despair. One woman emailed me and she said, you know what I feel like after these hookups? She said, I feel like the gross stuff in the road after the snow is melted and cars have been driving on it for a while. That's what my heart feels like. And what happens when it gets run over like that, eventually what you end up with is numbness, where some girls will think, look, I'm sexually liberated. I can have sex with a man and not be emotionally devastated if he doesn't call me back the next day. I'm sexually liberated. Look, this is not liberation. This is numbness. If you have a first-degree burn, it hurts, it's red. Second degree burn, you have blisters, it's very painful. Third degree burn, it's black, it's charred, it's dead. You could stick a needle in there and you wouldn't feel a thing because the nerve endings are shot and dead. This is what's happening in the hearts of so many young women who've given away so much, they don't even know how to feel hurt anymore. It's like they could have a mile-high wall around their heart, but no boundaries around their body. And if this is what we've come to, what's interesting, look at where these things collide, where the woman's fears and the man's fears collide. He's afraid to commit and give and initiate. She's afraid to expect more because then she's going to end up alone. They collide in the hookup, which is where we become slaves to both of our weaknesses. When we know this is not just a temporary indiscretion, we're missing the whole point of human life to make a total gift of ourselves. And if you feel after hearing this, well, I've already made these big mistakes. I've already done dumb stuff. How do I start over? How do I unwrap all of this stuff? Sometimes we just need to take some time to heal. My wife said, Jason, you don't know a secret about women? She said, Jason, women are masters at stuffing their stuff. She said, Jason, stuff happens to girls, like really serious stuff, and they just typically stuff it. They put their makeup on, their hair looks great. Outside, we got it all together. But she said, inside it's like this tangled up mess. We're so afraid to start crying because then we're afraid we're never going to stop crying. So we just numb ourselves with false consolations, smoking some weed, drinking some beer, hooking up with the boy, diet pills, eating disorders. She said, all this is being done to numb the hurt that isn't being healed. And she said, I want to show these women you can face it, you can own it, and you can heal it. And if you feel hopeless in your life, When was the last time you actually prayed for hope? We need to be specific when we got to ask for things, because God will answer the prayers. I know He will. When I was over in New Zealand, there were some nuns over there that wanted to have a Christmas play and a whole nativity scene, and one of the nuns was very extravagant. She wanted everything real. She wanted real baby Jesus, real donkey, real hay, real everything. And they said to her sister, that sounds great, but we live in New Zealand, okay? There's no native land mammals here bigger than a bat. Where are we going to find a donkey? And she said, well, St. Joseph. St. Joseph found a donkey for Jesus. She'll find a donkey for us. Well, it's logical enough. So they did a novena to St. Joseph. And the sister said, here, take out a piece of paper and draw a picture of a donkey. Put that under your pillow, so when you go to bed at night, you'll feel the paper, you'll pray for the donkey, you'll wake up, you'll feel the paper, you'll remember to pray your novena for the donkey. So like 9 days go by, and some weird guy just shows up at the convent with a donkey. And they're like, oh, praise God. And they look, and the donkey had no tail, nothing, just like a flat little rump. And they're like, well, it's still a donkey, we should be grateful to God. And one of the nuns went and got her drawing, and she said, And then she called all the other sisters, bring me your drawings. Every single nun brought their drawing together, and every single one of the sisters forgot to draw a tail upon her donkey. So, true story. So the moral is, when you ask God for something, it helps to be specific, okay? And so if you are despairing, if you feel broken, have you asked for healing? Have you asked for hope? Have you asked for purity? Have you asked that God will restore your heart? Because He can. Because you got to put God first. Because you never want to enter a relationship looking for the love that only God can give to you. Because if you do, the relationship will become an idol. And all idols are meant to be broken. C.S. Lewis even said, all idols will break the hearts of their worshipers. But if we can put God first, you'll see what I'm proposing you tonight is not about waiting to find love. This is active marriage preparation. Marriage preparation does not start 6 months before your wedding date. No, people spend on average 200 hours getting ready for their wedding. The question is, how many hours are being spent invested on the marriage itself? That's why this is marriage preparation. Marriage prep needs to start before you meet your spouse. So that's the third point of facing those fears. The fourth point, I would say, is make commitment clear. What I'm finding is it seems like a third of the women are dating, a third of the women are not dating, and the other third of the women don't even know if they are dating or not dating. And you'll ask them, well, are you dating? And they'll be like, well, it's complicated. Okay, well, what do you mean? Well, we went on a date, but we're not dating, but we are seeing each other, but we're not official, so technically we're not a boyfriend and girlfriend, but we're definitely a thing. Okay. What is a thing? Okay, like a thing grows out of the side of an elderly person's foot. Like that's a bunion. Okay, that's a thing. Okay, you don't want to be a thing. You want clarity. But here's the problem. Going back to the issue, guys aren't quite sure how to define the relationship thing. Well, what am I supposed to do? And so as a result, girls don't know the status of the relationship. And so guys, girls at your university are having slumber parties, okay, up in the dorm till like 3 o'clock in the morning, where they're analyzing all their potential relationships with each other. Like, so are you and him a thing or not? And like, well, and they're up late at night, they got their sweatpants, they got their hair in a bun, not the fake bun, like the real bun, and they're drinking their mocha frappo lappuccini things, and they're like, so are you guys seeing each other? Well, I don't know, he said this, well, maybe he meant that. Well, look at his text, I couldn't tell what he means by that. Well, let's outline his sentence. Maybe the verb was modifying a prepositional phrase, he's referring to this girl, and I'm like, what the heck, man? And so, while the girls are doing this, what's the guy doing? He's like playing Guitar Hero video games in the dorm by himself. He doesn't have a clue, And so, what was interesting, in the United States, there's a college, Boston University, where one of the professors was really bothered by the fact that her students were not going on dates. She said, dating is like extinct and it bothers me. So she said, you know what? I'm going to offer my university students extra credit if they go on a date. And she said, here's a date. You ask a person out to their face, no kissing, no drinking, no sex. You do that, you went on a date, come tell me about it, and I'm going to give you extra credit. Now the students were intrigued by this revolutionary concept. And some of the students said this. One guy said, look, it's easy to hook up with someone you just met in a dark room after having a few drinks, But asking someone out on a date in broad daylight and when you can actually have to know their name can be really scary. And one of the guys said, how would you ask someone out on a date? Like the actual words. But you see what's going on here is he's wanting to know, what am I supposed to do? But the fact is, the girls don't know what he's thinking because he's not talking. Why isn't the guy talking? Well, for one, men are not great communicators, but that's not our fault, it's God's fault. And here's why. Because we are different beings. There's this nonsensical idea in culture nowadays that gender is a cultural concept that has been imposed on humanity, and there really is no male, there's no female, we're pretty much the same thing. Modern neurology has blown this concept out of the water. Our brains are completely different. Between the two hemispheres of the male and female brain are the corpus callosum, connective fibers between the hemispheres of the brain. Women's brains have literally millions of more connective fibers between the two hemispheres of your brain, which gives you an extraordinary capacity to recall a memory, tie it to an emotion and a feeling, verbalize it, communicate it, listen, all this stuff at the same time. They found a man's brain, when we argue, we literally only use half of the brain during an argument. I said that at a school once, and one girl's like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And then a guy stood up and he said, yeah, we just want to make it fair. Oh, I'm like, hey, break it up. Complementarity, people. But the fact is, we're different. We are so different. And they found the woman, on average, will speak 20,000 words a day. The adult male is about 7,000 words a day, which means most of us guys hit our quota by lunchtime, okay? And so you get home to your wife and she's like, how's the trip you went on? Good. You know, well, let me tell you about my day. She just has like 19,000 words to go. It's like sipping out of a fire hydrant to consume all of this. And it's not just an adult thing. They said this starts at the age of 2. You can see little girls in the sandbox. Sally said to Jessica, Jessica, la 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 la. And look at the boys. They got like dump trucks. They're like boom, boom, boom. You know, and you know, it's pretty much the same discrepancy in marriage. But they found this isn't just a 2-year-old thing. National Geographic did a study of unborn embryos, and they found that female unborn embryos, at about 6 to 8 weeks of gestation, the mouth begins to move. They said the male embryo, nothing is going on whatsoever. They said, I'm sure if you looked at her little nubby fingers, she's like texting in there, just like getting ready to send out a message. You know, so verbally, we're very different. Now, why isn't the guy talking though? It's because he's not thinking. He might not even be thinking at all. In fact, they found that women's brains have a very high level of neurological activity 24 hours a day, even when she's sleeping. They found the male brain, on the other hand, actually goes into periods of hibernation. Get this? While he's awake, okay? Like just flat lines. And like, and you girls, you know what I'm talking about. Like, these are the moments you kind of looked at him and he's like glazed look, you know? And you're like, honey, what are you thinking? And he's like, hey, nothing, you know? And she's like, no, you can't be thinking nothing. Like, what are you thinking? And he's like, no, I'm telling you, like, I'm thinking about nothingness right now. And now she's suspicious. She's like, what are you not telling me? I'm not telling you nothing. You know, and then she pushes. She's like, well, what are you feeling right now? Oh, like feelings? Oh, I'm hungry. You know, I'm like, you know. And so you see what's going on here. He's not talking, he's not feeling, and so he doesn't know that she needs him to communicate, to define the relationship, to say, I want to date you, I want to be in a relationship with you, I want to commit to you. He doesn't know she wants him to talk like that, and so as a result, she's left to think, well, what do I need to do to draw him into a deeper level of commitment in this relationship? Perhaps I can give him what he's least likely to refuse, which is the physical. And as a result, it typically backfires. And so you see how this lack of communication and making communication clear and commitment clear is undermining the stability of our own relationships. And so that's the fourth point. Try to make that relationship clear and the commitment. Fifth point, keep your relationship pure. And there's a definite temptation in college to say, look, I'm not in high school anymore. I'm not 14, I'm not 15, I'm not 16. I've been dating this girl for 2 years now. We've talked about it. We feel ready for it. We truly love each other. We're mature enough. We're not kids anymore. But the fact is, there does not come an age at which sin becomes acceptable. We've got to realize that the more love I feel for this person, the more responsible I should feel for this person's soul. And our tendency is to justify lust because the intensity of our emotions. But the fact is, we think, well, I know this is the one. We're going to be together. But I'll tell you, I knew I had met the one. And I knew she was the one. And it didn't end up working out because I ended up going to a different third grade school than she did. And I never saw her again. But I worked beyond that. And then I got to college and I knew I had met the one. And we went to a couple dances together and then it didn't work out and she married a friend of mine. And that's okay. And then I went to the university and I met a girl and I knew she was the one. And we dated for 6 months and it didn't work out and she married a friend of mine. And that's okay. But then I dated another girl and we dated for 2 years. We knew we were going to get married. We tried on wedding rings and it didn't work out and she married a friend of mine. And then when I got to my master's program, I met another girl. We dated for 2 years. We knew we were the ones and it didn't work out and she married a friend of mine. And then when I was 24 years old, I met my wife, Kristalina. And at that point, all my friends had married my ex-girlfriend, so she had no option but to remain with me and we got married. But the point is, at no point in those relationships have you could have ever convinced me that the woman I was with was not the one. And the day it kind of smacked me in the face is the day that I was invited to one of their weddings. And we were still friends. Oh, yeah, I'll come out to your wedding. And I remember she married this friend of mine, and they announced at the end of Mass, we'd like to be the first to introduce for the first time, Mr. and Mrs. John. Everybody's clapping. They start clapping. And here they come walking down the aisle. And then it hit me like, whoa, man, I've done this with that guy's wife. I've done that with that guy's wife. Yeah, I knew we didn't have sex and we were just doing other stuff, but I knew we were meant to be, but man, maybe I didn't know. Maybe I was projecting my emotions far too far into the future and instead of waiting to receive her from the hands of God. And so we have to take a serious step back because you cannot judge the future of a relationship by the intensity of the present emotions. And so what we're called to is authentic chastity. Now, what does that look like for a college couple? Well, one of my friends, Sarah Swafford, she said, you know what it looks like? What it looks like is if you girls date a man and it doesn't work out, you should have been in that relationship and loving him in such a way that one day his future wife can come back to you and give you a huge hug and say, thank you for making my husband a better man. That type of integrity is what we're called to live with. Now, this is going to require a bit of a death of sorts. In fact, one boy came to me and he said, look, I'm sleeping with my girlfriend, but he said, I love her so much, I would die for her. I'm like, really? He's like, oh, I would die for her. He said, if someone put a gun to her head, I'd tell that person to shoot me instead. I'm like, no kidding, man. You take a bullet for her? He said, absolutely. I said, look, if you're willing to die for her, then do it. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, look, nobody's going to be shooting your girlfriend unless she's involved in organized crime or some Mexican drug cartel, and if that's the case, you got to make better dating decisions. But you don't have to protect her from the mafia, man. You got to protect her from sin. You got to protect her from lust. That's the death that has to happen. And so this is preparing us for the death within marriage. On our wedding day, there was a little boy sitting in the back of church. He had never been to a wedding before. And so he kept asking his dad, what does this mean? What does that mean? What does this symbolize? And the dad was explaining the whole liturgy. And then he said, Dad, why is Kristalina wearing this beautiful glowing white dress? And his dad said, because today is the happiest and most joyful day of her life. And he said, oh, okay, that makes sense. And he said, Dad, how come Jason's wearing all black then? It's a fair question, because the black that is worn by a priest of his clerics is an image of death, to die to himself, to be a father to us. Likewise, this death is something we're called to in marriage. And some husbands and fiancés are catching on to this. In fact, in America, there's a trend happening amongst Christian husbands that on their wedding day, typically there's the tradition, after the wedding, you go to the reception. The bride sits down in a chair, and then the groom reaches up her dress, and he pulls down her garter, and he throws it as a good luck charm to a bunch of slobbering single guys who fight over it as like a good luck charm. And a lot of Christian guys are saying, look, I don't want to do that. That's not how I want to introduce my bride to my friends and family. I'm going to do it a little differently. So what's happening now is the brides are sitting down in a chair after the wedding reception, and the groom comes out, and they think, okay, here comes the garter. No, the garter's not coming. He pulls out a pitcher of water, a bowl, and a towel, and he takes her shoe off, and he washes her feet as Christ washed the feet of his bride, the church, on the night before he gave his life for us. And these husbands are not putting on a show for their wedding party. This is actually how they think their brides deserve to be served. through this sacrificial death. And if we can learn how to die to ourselves through this practicing of chastity before marriage, I'm telling you, chastity does not end in marriage. It's one of the greatest things that holds marriages together. Because what I learned when I was dating Kristalina, that my abstinence is not waiting to love her. My abstinence is loving her tonight through this sacrifice. And do you know how helpful that is in marriage? Tonight, I'm probably 8,000 miles away from my wife. And tonight, my abstinence is an expression of love for my wife. And if I get home and my wife is exhausted from having the kids to herself for 5 days by herself and she's totally tired, guess what? Again that night, abstinence will be an expression of love. In fact, a friend of mine, he and his wife, in marriage, she had been molested when she was a little girl. And she never really went to counseling. She kind of just toughed it all out. And in marriage, those wounds started to come to the surface, the memories, the flashbacks. And she told her husband, honey, we can't be intimate for a while. I need some space. It's just bringing back too many memories and I can't process this right now. And him, being the great husband that he is, said, honey, I'm with you in this. We can show love in other different non-sexual ways. We're going to get through this together, honey. Okay, awesome. And a week went by of abstinence. Okay, that happens in marriage. Okay, 2 weeks went by. Okay, not untypical. A month went by. 2 months of abstinence. 3 months. 4 months. 5 months. 6 months. At which point, the husband is truly wrestling with God over this now. Like, God, like, Jesus, like, I didn't sign up for this. And Jesus is like, actually, you did sign up for this. You know, remember that whole good times, bad, sickness, and health? This is what we're talking about here. And during this time, this desert within his own marriage, the man began to seriously question his own masculinity because his wife was completely sexually unresponsive to him. And it made him feel less masculine because we've all been trained that your masculinity, you conquer a woman for the sake of yourself, when in God's notion of masculinity, you conquer yourself for the sake of the woman. And during this time of this desert, God was purifying and healing in him his broken notion of masculinity. And by staying on the cross, he became more masculine to his wife than he had ever been before. And through his sacrifice, his bride was also healed. And you could see how this skill of understanding abstinence as an expression of love prior to marriage could prove to be this incredibly beneficial asset within the sacrament of marriage. In fact, I knew a couple priests who stayed up late one night discussing, like, why are some marriages lasting that we thought never had a chance, and then some marriages that we thought were doomed to last forever will fall apart in months? What's the difference in these couples? And they stayed up late at night into discussing this. And the priests' conclusion together from all their decades of pastoral experience was this: the couples that last are the couples that are willing to work at their marriages when things get tough. And this is why the virtue of chastity is such a benefit in marriage, because it trains you in faithfulness. It trains you in that sacrifice. And some people think, well, look, I don't understand. Sex out of marriage, bad. Sex in marriage, good. Out bad, in good. Like, I don't understand. Like, what is it? Marriage gives you like some license to have sex and now it's legal or something? But that's a legalistic way to look at it. The reason why sex in marriage is so good is because that's when your body speaks the truth. When I stood at the altar with my wife, you make these promises. Do you two come here today freely, without reservation, to give yourselves to one another in good times, bad, sickness, and health? Yes, yes, yes. Will you be faithful? Yes. Will you welcome children? Yes. And then what you do is you leave your church, you go to the sanctuary of your bedroom, and on that night, on the altar of the bed, you exchange the vows with your body. Not your words, but your body. I give my body to you tonight freely. I'm not coercing you. I'm not manipulating you. I'm not pressuring you. I'm not paying you. This is a free gift of self. It is total. I hold back nothing from you, not even my fatherhood. It is faithful to you. Not just my body parts, my imagination, my heart is faithful to you. And it's open to life. It's ordered towards procreation. It's never sterilized or contracepted. The wedding vows become flesh. And that's why when a husband and a wife make love, they're renewing their wedding vows in the flesh. And that's why sex outside of marriage is a lie spoken in the language of the body. There's a movie came out in America. This guy had sex with Cameron Diaz, and she said, don't you know when you make love to a woman, your body makes a promise to her whether you do or not? The promise of sex is I'm completely yours, and only within marriage do the bodies speak the truth. Now, this teaching that I'm giving you tonight is without question demanding. But being in the university, you're accustomed to demands, intellectual demands. If you play sports, physical demands. All the church is asking is that you'd be demanding of your heart, be demanding of your soul, and it's going to bear fruit within your marriage. But this would be the fifth point, is to practice purity within that relationship. Sixth point, I would say, you're getting now closer to marriage. Do not live together prior to you get married. And some people think, well, that's ridiculous. You got to know if you're compatible with each other. I mean, don't you have to kind of test drive the marriage to know if you're really compatible? You just trust me on this one. If you're a girl and he's a guy, you are not compatible. I figured that out so fast in marriage, man. I mean, I knew we were incompatible as soon as you get back from the honeymoon. She moves all her stuff in my bathroom. And you know what happens when a woman gets in a guy's bathroom? This is a hostile takeover, all right? I mean, I look in the bathroom, she's got like 47 different bottles of things in the shower. She's got pumice foot polish and like kneecap remover and like all this stuff. And she's got like this body wash, exfoliating body wash. There's raspberry, melon, apricot, Vegemite. I'm like, oh, it's salad dressing. And so like, in marriage, you're not going to be compatible, okay? I mean, I go out into the bedroom, I walk into our bedroom, like the first week of marriage, she's got like 15 pillows on the bed. I'm like, what is that? And I go to get on the bed, and she's like, you can't touch the pillows. I'm like, I can't touch the pillows, it's the bed. She said, they're throw pillows. I'm like, what does that mean? She says, oh, you mean you just throw them on the floor? She's like, well, you got to put the pillows go on the floor. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm sleeping on the floor? She said, no, you put the pillows on the floor when you get on the bed, and then when you get off the bed, the pillows go on. I'm like, what is that? I mean, like, so you're not going to be compatible. But I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, where does the whole notion of compatibility come from? The word compatible, its etymology is from Latin, compati, which means to suffer with. Lasting marriages aren't because you just fit so perfectly, but you're just willing to work at the marriage when things get tough. And so that's the sixth point I'd throw out there. Wait to move together until you move in, until you get married. And some people say, well, look, if you want to buy a car, don't you need to test drive it before you buy it? Absolutely. Now, what do you do with that car in 5 years and a better looking car comes out? You dump the old one, you get the new one. Are you going to do that with your spouse too? You can test drive things, but you can't test drive people. In fact, you cannot even test drive marriage because by its very nature, the institution is permanent. You can't test drive something permanent. You have to give it your all or nothing. Now, point number 7, I would throw out there. Now that we've gotten so close to marriage in this discussion, and now we're in the sacrament of marriage, when it comes time to plan your family, have the humility to listen to the church and use natural family planning if you need to space kids instead of contraception. Now, some people think, well, what does the Catholic Church want us to use? The rhythm method that had a failure rate of 30%. Personally, I think that's great. My parents tried it and it didn't work. I'm right here. I mean, that's a good deal. And so, but if I want to plan my family, my wife and I use natural family planning. And some people immediately object. I'm like, well, what do we suppose? Oh, that NFP, that's that whole Vatican thing. Like a bunch of celibate priests and bishops could really know anything about marital intimacy. This idea that celibates could know nothing about human love is nonsense. Because if you think about it, look, I'm one husband. I'm one man. I basically know one woman, and that's it. And she'd probably argue, I don't even know her that well. I mean, she even told me once, she's like, Jason, you're not a very good listener. I said, honey, I'm a motivational speaker, not a motivational listener. Now, she didn't think that was very funny, but I thought it was rather witty on my part. But the point is, look, I know one imperfectly. But look, a priest is not confined to one because he's hearing thousands of their confessions of the things they're not even perhaps saying to their spouses. He's there helping them in marriage preparation, marital counseling. He's there burying their spouses, baptizing their kids. The prism through which our priests and sisters look at human love through 2,000 years of the wisdom of the church. To throw out all of that wisdom, we would be the ones who remain impoverished. Because what NFP taught me is that my wife's body, and for those who aren't familiar with NFP, it involves no chemicals, no drugs. You chart the woman's fertility, and you can plan your family that way. And it taught me my wife's body is perfect. She doesn't need drugs, she doesn't need pills, she doesn't need latex, she doesn't need to be barriers. You know what she needs? She needs to be understood. Because if you can understand a woman, then instead of suppressing her fertility with synthetic sex hormones and barriers to conform to our sexual desires, we conform our desires to the perfect way her body has already been created. This is sexual liberation. And so, seriously, that means It's God's idea. Now, it does involve times of abstinence. Now, couples who use NFP have just as much intercourse as those who do not. They simply time it differently. But some people, when they hear it involves abstinence, want nothing to do with the method. In fact, a friend of mine, he and his wife couldn't have kids. They had all these fertility problems. They go to a fertility doctor, and the doctor said, okay, I need to assess your wife's fertility, and to do that, I need you to abstain from sex for 30 days. And my friend said to the doctor, like, 30 days of abstinence? And to do that? And the doctor's like, yes, I need 30 days. And my friend's like, oh. He said, does it have to be 30 consecutive days, doctor? And the doctor's like, yes, 30 days of abstinence. And they were in a Catholic hospital. The nurse in attendance was a religious sister, a 70-year-old celibate woman. And so when my friend gasped a month, the sister looked at him and she said, you'll be all right. He realized he's gonna make it. And unfortunately, young couples are told almost nothing about NFP and marriage preparation. In fact, I give talks to engaged couples in California, and the diocese gives them this survey to see what they know about NFP. And they asked this 26-year-old woman, in one sentence, define natural family planning. She said, oh, that's a way to have sex that meets church requirements. Doesn't that sound like fun? But this is literally all that she knew. She didn't even know the truth about contraception. Things like the birth control pill increase a woman's risk of getting breast cancer. She didn't know that. She didn't know when a woman goes on the pill, it triggers more than 150 physiological changes in the woman's body, from her head to her toe. Her eyes change when she goes on the pill. Her cornea steepens and becomes more dehydrated. That's why women on the pill often complain their contact lenses have become more uncomfortable. One study found that women on the pill blink 32% more often than those not on the pill. I mentioned that at a school once, and some girls at the high school were like, look, that girl's on the pill. And the girl's like, no, I'm not. Stop it, guys. Quit making fun of me. But instead though, of like harping on all the bad side effects of contraception, I like to look at what are the good side effects of not using contraception. You all learn from like grades, year 7 biology, one sperm gets a girl pregnant. Okay. What happens to the other hundreds of millions of sperm introduced to a woman through a single act of intercourse? It used to be believed that they serve no purpose, that if they were not successful in fertilizing her, there was no real purpose. Scientists have found it's not true at all. In fact, within a man's seminal fluid are literally dozens of biological ingredients that serve different purposes for the woman's physiology. They found that after intercourse, the woman will send white blood cells down to her cervix, and they will scour the surface of her cervix and bring the man's sperm proteins and DNA inside deeper into the woman's body, into her lymph nodes, which is part of her immune system, which will learn to recognize the genetic type of that man's sperm. And so if she gets pregnant later with she gets pregnant with his child, her body will recognize the genetic type of the baby, match it to the genetic type of sperm that have absorbed into her body, and it actually makes for an easier pregnancy. When she has been deprived of this by means of a barrier method of contraception, whether it's the condom, a diaphragm, or a cervical cap, the Journal of the American Medical Association said she's more than twice as likely to suffer preeclampsia during pregnancy, which is an elevated blood pressure risk, and it's a risk to the health of the mother. Now, I'm reading this, and I'm typing it into a book that I was writing on this stuff, and I was on an airplane. A woman leaned over next to me, and she said, what are you writing about? And I'm like, well, hey. I said, so this is an epidemiologic study of the contraception and preeclampsia, and I explained it to her, and she said, wow, can I read that? And I explained it all to her, and she says, wow. She said, you know what? My husband and I, she said, I know I just met you, but I feel like I know you so well. She said, my husband and I have been married for 10 years. We have 3 children, and we use the condom between every child to plan the pregnancy. She said, every single pregnancy I had preeclampsia. How come they never taught this to us in marriage preparation class? And you want to know the best line in the whole study? Is this, that if a man and a woman are using a contraception, you ready for this? You know what they're doing? They're having unprotected sexual intercourse because they're using a condom. Why? Because the man is not protecting the woman with the beneficial effects of his semen. And this beautiful article on conception, do you know when it came out in the Journal of the American Medical Association? That's right, December 8th, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception in the Catholic Church. So I always kind of appreciate when they rotate their articles according to our liturgical calendar. So I thought that was very thoughtful of them. But it goes deeper than that. This study came out, London, Reuters, Hormones in semen shown to make women feel good. London, hormones in semen may help to ease female depression because women whose partners don't use condoms are less likely to feel down. Scientists suspect the mood-altering hormones are absorbed through the vagina and make women feel good, but they stress the results are not an excuse for unprotected sex, heaven forbid. And it says, the magazine said the results are not a big surprise because scientists know that semen contains several mood-altering hormones, including testosterone. Some of these have been detected in a woman's blood within hours of exposure to semen, the magazine said. Now, some people have contested this in subsequent studies and saying, well, we don't know if it's enough of an antidepressant to actually shift the mood or it's other factors contributing to that, but they said the fact is we cannot deny that the man is actually within the woman's bloodstream after intercourse. The two literally become one. They're doing studies now where they're finding male chromosomes in women's bodies. And they're wondering, what is it doing there? And they find out some of the women are because they had a baby boy. And when you're pregnant, your baby's blood cells go through the placenta and they enter your bloodstream and they live there. They're actually finding baby's white blood cells. Years after the mother gave birth to that child and the mother gets a disease like liver cancer, they're actually finding the baby's blood cells right alongside the mom's blood cells fighting against that disease to protect the mother's body. The baby is helping the mother to heal. They've even actually found that women have many, many children typically look younger. And it says there's an actual genetic cause to this of having new life within you continually. And you can Google this stuff on the internet. It's amazing what scientists are finding. And they found, well, you know what? Some of these women who are having Y chromosomes in their bodies did not have a baby. So what's a Y chromosome doing in their body? They found some of them are actually uterine twins. They were twins with a male, which means when they were pregnant, when they were in their mother's womb, there was a boy fetus there. And the boy's fetus, his cells went into the woman's bloodstream, and then it came back through her placenta, and the two have some genetic commonalities because of the bloodstream. But then they found, well, some of these women have never had a kid, they were never a twin with a boy, yet they have Y chromosomes in their body. And what they found is when they were studying the women, the people that they weren't finding Y chromosomes in the body were the virgins. And they're speculating that what it could be, that when a man and a woman become one flesh, they literally become one flesh. That this is not a biblical analogy, that God has created us to be one flesh with each other. And so one of the scientists said, well, this is just disgusting. No, it's not. This is breathtaking if we can understand the way God has created our bodies to work. And so how does this apply to you as a single college woman? Well, what are you supposed to do when it comes to contraception? Well, I would say, obviously don't use it as a single woman. Now, why? The study I read to you at the beginning, with this hookup culture on college campuses, at the end of that study, they said, why is this hookup culture happening? And you know what the sociologists said? They said one of the major reasons they believe is contraception. And well, the reason they said that is they said, if you look in nature, you have males and females have different reproductive rates in the species. They said typically the male of a species has a very fast reproductive rate, meaning how fast he can reproduce. The woman, they said, and amongst all species, typically have a very long reproductive rate. For a human, they said it's about 1.5 years. Meaning from the time of fertilization to gestation to lactation to breastfeeding and weaning the child can take 1.5 years of a woman's life just for one reproductive rate. They said a man doesn't take 1.5 years, he could take 1.5 minutes and he's done. But they said what contraception does is it takes the woman's reproductive rate and it brings it down to the male reproductive rate of almost nothing. And as a result, reproduction only takes a matter of minutes because you've closed life out of the process. Now, why is this a problem with relationships? They said among species, the one who has the longer reproductive rate is more choosy with their mates because they could invest, they could lose more if they make a poor reproductive choice. But they said when you have the women having the same reproductive rate as the male, as a result, women are making poorer mating decisions than ever in the history of humanity. And so we have to understand that the church's teachings on this topic for 2,000 years have not been to repress us, but when we can listen to the wisdom of the church, we're going to be blessed by that. Now, with everything that I've dumped on you tonight, from pornography to contraception to cohabitation and all this stuff, how do you ultimately live this thing out on a college campus? One thing I think you really need to do is you got to surround yourself with good people. If you look in college, who was St. Francis Xavier's roommate at his university? St. Ignatius of Loyola. Well, that helps a little bit now, doesn't it? Now, some of you may be thinking, well, my roommate's not going to get a canonized saint anytime soon. Well, you might be right on that one, but we got to seek out good companionship. Get plugged into the Catholic society. Get to know some people there. It's a lot easier to live this out because you always become like your friends. You also need to live a more sacramental life. Get going to confession, please, at least once a month in college. If you can go to confession once a month in college, you are going to give yourself a tremendous spiritual foundation to begin your life. And I'll grant you, sometimes, you know what, it could be a little bit awkward. I shared last night with a group that my college roommate one day, I came home, he's watching World Cup TV. And I'm like, hey, you want to go to the gym? He's like, no, I'm watching TV. I'm like, okay, whatever. I go do some homework. I came down. I'm like, hey, I'm going out. You want to go come with me? He's like, no, I'm watching World Cup, man. I can't leave, It's like Italians. They watch it for like a month and a half without blinking, And so I went out for a couple hours. I come back. He's still watching TV. I'm like, Dario, man, you got to get up, man. You got to go do something. You're being idle. And he didn't understand English that well. So he's like, idle? Like TV is idle? And I'm like, no, it's not idolatry. But I mean, you could think of it that way if you wanted to. And he was kind of convicted by our conversation. So he went to confession to confess the sin of idolatry, which sounds a lot like another sin. And he confessed this to a priest who was hard of hearing, okay? So he shows up to confess. Oh, Father, forgive me. I'm guilty of adultery. Ooh. It's not a big deal. Oh, it is a very big deal. Well, I don't know, Father. It's just something to do after school. Oh, no. And Dario's like, well, what's the big deal? I said, well, this is a grave sin. Well, I don't know, Father. Sometimes my friends even come over too. I mean, and he's like, yeah, my roommate walked in on me. He told me I need to cut it out. And then he came back 2 hours later, told me to stop again. And the priest gave him this gigantic penance, and they never resolved the discrepancy until much, much later. And so look, it could be a little awkward, but you know what? That's okay. Confession is not humiliating, okay? Confession is humbling. And sometimes we need that humbling in our life. To be honest, to be real, to be raw. Don't go priest hopping either. Find a good priest and stick with him. You don't be, oh, that priest is from Vietnam. I'm going to there tomorrow. I'm going to this one. No, we got to find one. So that priest eventually can smell the trail of our sin. And then he can lead us to be able to be free from that stuff if he knows where we're strong and where we're weak. Go off into confession. Go off into Mass. If you can go to daily Mass, I always say daily Mass is only for people who have nothing better to do, which is all of us. No one has anything better to do than the sacrifice of the Mass. And if you can carve out 30 minutes of your day to go spend time with Jesus, spend some time in Eucharistic adoration like we're going to do tonight. Last night I shared the story of Pope John Paul II, who knew how present Christ was in the Eucharist. I don't know how many of you were there last night at that talk. So just a small handful. So this is the story of John Paul II. To me, tells you everything about the Eucharist. He came to visit the United States, and in preparation, the Vatican sends a group of people to get everything all ready for him. The priest in charge of this is a Jesuit named Father Roberto Tucci. And he got everything ready for the Pope in Baltimore. And as he was getting everything ready, he's walking through the bishop's residence where the Pope is going to stay for a little rest. And he's walking down the hallway, and all the doors on either side of the hallway will look the same, but one door opens to the chapel with the Most Blessed Sacrament. And Father Tucci told the priest there, Father Michael White, hey, look, when the Pope comes, we do need to make sure that door is closed because we can't let Pope John Paul II know the Blessed Sacrament is here in the residence. And Father Michael White's like, why are you hiding the Eucharist from the Pope? I mean, that's kind of weird. And Father Tucci said, look, we're the Pope's handlers. We're in charge of his schedule. Every minute of every apostolic visit is scheduled. He's got 5 minutes with the poor, 2 minutes with the prime minister, 3 minutes for that. And he said the problem is whenever John Paul II finds a Eucharistic chapel, he insists on going in. Then he gets lost in contemplative prayer for 45 minutes, and it ruins our entire schedule. And so they said we literally reroute his Pope mobile in cities away from Catholic churches because if we pass by, he's like knocking on the glass and he wants to go visit Jesus. And so we don't have time for this. And so he said, look, when the Pope comes, just close the door. And Father Michael, yes, okay, well, I'll make sure it's closed. And so sure enough, a couple weeks later, Pope John Paul II comes. And he's walking down the hallway. All the doors look the same. And he's just slowly walking down the hallway. And he passes by the door. And then he stops. And then he turns around, he looks at the door, then he looks over at Father Tucci and he shook his head and wagged his finger at him. And then he opened up the door, went right in to visit Jesus. And he spent an especially long time in adoration just to give Father Tucci a little poke in the eye for this stunt. And Father Michael White was standing there in the hallway, and he was astonished. He said there's no way he could have known. He's never been here before, but he just sensed our Lord's presence. And he said, if you think this is just some little coincidence, he said the Pope did the very same thing the very next day in the seminary right across the street. He sensed our Lord's presence. And if Christ is truly present in the Blessed Sacrament, this changes everything in our lives. Because the average person spends 12 years of their life watching television. How much time are we spending before the Blessed Sacrament? You want to be healed from looking at pornography? Look at that flesh instead. Look at the flesh of God and let it purify your eyes and your heart. And so tonight, we're going to have an opportunity to spend time with Christ in Eucharistic adoration. After this presentation, we're going to go as a group and spend some time at the John Paul II Center, is that what it's called? And we're going to spend some time in prayer together. But don't just go tonight. Keep going. And also, I would recommend too, devotion to Our Lady. If you can get a rosary, always keep this on you. Keep it in your pocket and pray it every day. You'd be amazed how often it reminds you to pray if it's just there in your pocket. And so you think, I can't pray 15 minutes a day. Fine, just do a Hail Mary every day. Just stay faithful in these little devotions and she'll see you through. And to help you stay strong in this, we've brought, through Perusia Media, has brought a whole bunch of resources on the way out. And I just want to run through some of the gifts that they have back there that you can acquire. They've got a bunch of books and CDs. This CD, How to Save Your Marriage Before Your Meeting Spouse, is pretty much tonight's talk. So if you want to share this with a friend or a future ex-boyfriend or whatever, then you can pass that on to them. And then this one, How to Date Your Soulmate. There's ones on how to break free from pornography. So if your roommate needs that, put it in his backpack. Be like, I'm not judging, but you better listen to that one a little bit. So all these different CDs. Then there's all these different books and resources. This is one my wife and I wrote for college women and university women called How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul. 21 Secrets for Women. Some people are like, where's the book for guys? Guys don't read, okay? So here's the book for the guys. It's right there, okay? So larger print, pictures. And then there's booklets that my wife and I have written for guys, for girls. If You Really Love Me is the top 100 questions we get from high school and university students on dating, relationships, and chastity. This one is a biography of my hero, St. John Paul the Great, so that one's available. Then this book just came out a couple of weeks ago for fathers. If you want to get your dad an early Father's Day gift or birthday gift, or if you're becoming a new dad, this is the best book that I have ever read on fatherhood. It's called Show Us the Father. Came out a few weeks ago. I've already read it twice, and it's fantastic. And then they also have a couple things out there. This is a curriculum called Chosen. If you're doing youth ministry, you're working in a school, this is one of the best faith formation programs on the market. And so if you're working with young people, it's an awesome program that Perusia carries. And then two last things that are out there, little flyers. One is, I'm heading off tomorrow. We're going to Tasmania in the morning and then Melbourne in the afternoon. You think that's funny because you don't know how to say the letter R, and I can, okay? So, in Melbourne, Melbourne, so I'm going to Melbourne tomorrow, and so I'm heading home. But the nice thing is you've got a real gift here in Sydney. You've got another chastity speaker that's here in town named Simon. You can pick up a flyer on this guy, and he can come speak in the schools and the churches and the youth group to keep this message going. And then there's also World Youth Day flyers. I'm going to be part of a pilgrimage group that's heading to World Youth Day. If you don't have a group to go with yet, you can tag along with ours. There's flyers on that whole thing there. And so all the resources are out there. But the one thing that I have as the best gift for you is every talk I've given in Australia so far, I've asked all of the audience to pray for the other talks that I'm giving. And right before I left, I asked everybody on our Facebook and Twitter to pray for everybody, which is 140,000 people. And all these prayers are descending on you. And all I ask in your return is if you'd please pray for the students I'm speaking to tomorrow morning and tomorrow evening, and then all the students I speak to around the world and back in the States. The people that I have praying for my ministry is where any fruit of my ministry comes from. I have over 100 convents of nuns who pray for the people I speak to. That's like the ammo of the church. I mean, I wrote a letter to Pope John Paul II. He had all these nuns that got his mail. It's kind of like the elves of the North Pole. It's the same concept. And I got confirmation from the Vatican that John Paul II prayed for us. And I see the fruit of your prayers constantly in our ministry. In fact, one woman wrote to me and she said she heard my talk, and when she heard the talk, at that time, she was a stripper. She was an adult dancer, and after hearing my chastity talk, not only did she quit stripping, she said she bought my DVD and she brought it with a television set into the strip club, and she showed all the strippers my chastity talk in the back room of a strip club, and now she's a pro-life speaker. Now, where are these conversions coming from? It's coming from people praying, fasting, adoration, rosary, all those prayers that you offer for my ministry. I'm going to be in debt to you forever for the conversions that I see because of that. And if I could leave you with one thing, it would be this, that if after hearing this whole talk, and maybe you've made some big mistakes, maybe you wish you heard this talk 10 years ago, and your heart is just heavy, all you need to know is one thing, how God looks at you for doing that stuff. And this is how he sees you. Dad, a few years ago, dropped his kid off at preschool, and he said, I love you, I'll pick you up after school, promise come get you. And the dad went to work. Huge earthquake struck Armenia. And the dad shoots the car back, but it's too late, the school's collapsed, the faculty's dead, and dad says, I know my son's in that school, and he starts tearing off the rocks and the glass, and he dug for an hour and 5 hours. His knuckles are bleeding open, his back is cramped up. He dug for 10 hours. People told him, give up, they're gone, accept it. He dug for 30 hours. He said, all I could think when I dug for my sons, the promise I always made, which is no matter what happens, I'm always going to be there for you. And 38 hours later, he lifts up a board, and then under that was the face of his son. And he looked down upon his son, and his son looked up to him and said, Papa. And his son turned to 14 kids trapped alive with him and said, see, told you my daddy was coming to get me. I told you that he promised. This is the love of God the Father, especially in this year of mercy. It doesn't matter how far away we think he is, he's always there to welcome them home. You guys have been a wonderful audience. I love you guys. Have a beautiful life. Thank you very much. Thank you.